Not far from Warsaw, a little off the main road to Poznań, there is a place called Arcadia. Built for the fancy of some early 19th century count, it is a sort of park where, in a wood, there stand a number of dilapidated little monuments meant to evoke one or other of the romantic emotions. There is an attempt at Stonehenge, some fragmentary temples, a rocky grotto, and there is also an elaborate fountain, now dry, decorated with the stucco relief of a naked girl offering a drinking cup to a dragon writhing intimately alongside her. It seems to be based on a fresco in the Villa of the Mysteries at Pompeii. Underneath is written, "L'espérance nourrit une chimère, et la vie s'écoule." Since I first saw that fountain, more than 20 years ago on one of my early visits to Poland, the friends with whom I was young have grown middle-aged. Some nourished the thought that Polish communism could, in spite of its past failures, find within itself the power to create a new synthesis of socialism and democracy which had never been seen in Europe. Others cradle the idea that the Soviet Union might one day be transformed, or, less improbably, decide to withdraw behind its own frontiers. Meanwhile, they raised children and, in their turn, now hear themselves explaining to sons and daughters, as their parents had explained to them, the difference between the real history of Poland and history taught at school. And life flowed away. The events of 1980 in Poland were not, however, a chimera. The self-limiting revolution which began at Gdansk in the Lenin shipyard was real, and whatever price Poland may eventually have to pay for it, its intangible and moral achievements are permanent. If the democratic reform of the Polish United Workers' Party and the appearance of the independent trade union Solidarity can be consolidated, this will also prove to have been the most important change in Eastern Europe since the end of the Second World War. This book is an attempt to describe what took place in 1980, much of which I witnessed, to analyze some of its consequences and implications, and to ask why so many hopes had to be poured away in the preceding 35 years. I have deliberately written about Poland as a European society, a member of the ancient continental family which is at present so superficially divided into alliances and communities, rather than as the problem member of the communist bloc, a bloodless kind of terminology. Especially in Poland, however, many people will disagree with judgments and versions of history in this book. Perhaps this is inevitable. The encounter with Poland corrodes most political assumptions, not because this is an exotic nation, but because it presents a view of the squalid underside of big concepts, the side which rests on top of human beings. Bismarck, with his grand design for European peace, becomes the man who had thousands of Polish small boys caned for speaking their own language. Churchill and Stalin lost dignity in the hour of victory in wrangles over Polish rivers and villages they could not spell. Capitalism meant that the nation's factories were owned by Germans and Frenchmen. Socialism, which in theory comes so much closer to the Polish sense of community and equality, has become a term so defiled by public squalor, private privilege, and hypocrisy about the Soviet Union that it has become, for the moment, unrecognizable. Ideological consistency in Poland is confined to leading articles in newspapers. The Poles are concerned to survive, and Polish governments, however extreme they appear, are concerned not to do things to their own people that are unforgivable or irreparable. The results are often political systems whose structure mystifies the orderly mind of a foreigner, whether he is a Soviet official or an American professor. Edward Gierek's regime between 1970 and 1980, a communist Politburo relying upon the Roman Catholic hierarchy and mortally afraid of the industrial proletariat, made all Europe stop and stare. When it fell down, there emerged a workers' revolution which walked behind the crucifix and refused to take control of the means of production. Solidarity has been infinitely distressing to many left-wingers in the West. My hope is that this book, by explaining a little, will reduce that distress.